Hi everybody. So I'm testing out going live this week because we have a big sugaring webinar coming up on Monday. So that's exciting. And I'm going to go over some of the surrounding products, prep products, and that kind of thing for SugarLove. Yay! So it looks like I grabbed a soft paste. So let's go over the soft. The soft is for waxing, and sometimes you can also use this in sugaring when your room is really cold. It's a good choice on large body parts to use the soft organic paste. So I also mix our pastes, which gets a little bit into, you know, the advanced parts of sugaring. So sometimes even in our day 1, day 2 classes, we get to mixing sugar a little bit, but when you get really experienced in sugaring, that's when you're going to be mixing these different pastes more. I am at my home office again today, and if we get disturbed by my kids, I have 3 kids, if you guys are not aware. I know there's a lot of fellow mommy estheticians that I love connecting with. So anyway, we were talking about the cold paste, and we're going to go through all of our products because we haven't had a lot of time to do that with you guys, and I've been looking for a platform where I can really just do this on the spur of the moment, just like when I make posts. So the soft, if you want to hear more about it, I talked about it at the beginning if you just joined now, and I can see your comments, by the way, so if you have any questions you can ask them and I will answer them live on video, which is so exciting. Let's see. Do you have to be certified in order to offer sugaring? That's a great question, Alexandra. You know, because our company is different, we get a lot of questions about that. My goal with our company was to make sugaring extremely accessible, and there were a lot of rules with sugaring when I worked with other companies. Like when I became really experienced, I wasn't allowed to train my own estheticians. So number one, our soft and our original paste is actually able to be used as a wax. You heat it at a really low heat and it becomes a wax. Some sugarists that have been used to warm paste actually heat our original and our firm on really extra low temperatures, but we do not require the certificate for purchase because we have too much crossover with waxing, number one. But number two, what's really important to know about that is you don't want to go out and attempt sugaring if you're taking it seriously without hands-on help. It would be like going into a Brazilian after a video and expecting to succeed. Sugaring has very tiny, very tiny things can make it seem like it's not working. So I don't want people to get discouraged by that. And I still haven't figured out on these how to invite people, or I would have invited everyone just on the spur of the moment. But this is just a product talk and a little bit of a talk about sugaring. Tiffany says, hi Jessica, my question is sugaring good for the bikini and full Brazilian? Absolutely, especially if you have clients that have had ingrowns. I'm an esthetician who's created products, for example, for 10 years. I could not get rid of my own ingrowns before I started sugaring, and a lot of that had to do with what's actually in a lot of waxes. So what's in a lot of waxes is plastic. That's what polymer is. My skin reacts to nylon and synthetics just in underwear, so you can imagine how unhappy some people's skin is when it's exposed to dyes, fragrances. This isn't all waxes, by the way. There are clean ones available, but sugar is the only way to go 100% organic with your wax. So I have strip waxing spas that's all they use. They use sugar as a strip wax. But there are some things you need to know about sugar before you attempt to use it as a strip wax. So back to mixing sugars. We get questions about this all the time. And we have 3 types of sugar. And there's soft, original, and firm. Soft and original can be heated into a wax. These jars are rated for 240 degrees. So if your warmer melts a jar, that's fantastic because you will know that that warmer is dangerous. That warmer should not be going to 240 degrees. So these are completely safe in regular wax warmers. Oh, our sugar warmers are coming back in stock this week. It took me a couple of months to find a new manufacturer, and it's actually very, very similar to the one that we had before. So our larger sugar tubs, which I didn't put on my little table here, this is my only little sugar I grabbed. This is our sample size, by the way, that's only $10. And remember that you can buy a sample, you know, for waxing or sugaring, but do not expect to succeed, especially with complicated areas with sugaring on your own. I have had miracle workers that watched my videos and they were able to learn mainly the large kind of uncomplicated areas on their own. But I didn't want any restrictions with our certifications in the way that it blocked me from growing when I was an esthetician using other companies. So even maybe some of the sugaring world may be a little surprised at how I've set up my company, but there's a reason behind it, and we never encourage people to try to learn the hand paste method on their own. It's, you know, out of 100 estheticians, it's probably a couple out of 500 people that have been able to learn on their own. So I highly recommend watching as many of our videos as you can, getting hands-on coaching so that you can really succeed. And then also I'm going to make a lot more videos on waxing. I'm going to go back to some questions here. Excuse me, I'm scrolling back up. Let's see. Alexandra says, oh wow, it makes so much sense why I get bumps and ingrowns so much. Yes, you know, part of it is before and after care. There's a lot of little tiny details that get missed when people get ingrowns, but sugaring, the main reason it's better than waxing. My room up here is rather warm, so I can see I'm glistening here. Live video. So, the reason, excuse me, that you get ingrowns with waxing as well is, imagine a blackhead, you know, let's say the pores on the nose are going this direction. If you try to remove a blackhead backwards, it won't even come out of the pore. And that's how I often describe sugaring. You're removing the hair in the direction that the hair is going. So it actually wants to come out that way. What happens with waxing when you remove the hair backwards, it's kind of like a blackhead going the wrong way. The follicle can get warped or torn, and that's where you get recurring ingrowns, you know, from waxing. But waxing can be done really well. I was a die-hard waxer. I didn't believe sugaring would be better, and it has been. So I did my own clinical trials for a year, side by side, with waxing, and it convinced me with the feedback that I got from hundreds of clients that I couldn't be a skeptic anymore, that sugaring had so many more benefits. So let me get back to some questions here. Excuse me, my thumb. Any classes, if you're interested in classes, go to sugaringprofessional.com and follow our class page, follow our groups as you're doing. If we have 6 people that we can get deposits in place, you know, the travel costs for us to go, understandably, we just mainly need to cover those. We're really motivated to get as many classes going as possible. So we have to be able to get there, pay our trainer if we're sending someone besides myself. So let's see. My company's about being natural, so sugaring is my answer, says Tiffany. Absolutely, I've always been green, organic, natural, and I was frustrated for years that I couldn't find strip wax or wax that wasn't toxic or full of plastic or biodegradable. We do have a wonderful natural hard wax that's super flexible. If you're vegan, it does have beeswax in it. But, you know, if you're really committed to being organic, sugar is the way to go. But there are differences in companies with the way that their sugar wax is going to work. So I went through several companies, probably 7 different test runs with other company sugars as wax, and I didn't have any luck until I created a cold paste. And I think that's because the cold formula is very different. And if you have experienced, any of you have experienced using both, then you'll know what I mean. So I want to get back to going through the products, because in class sometimes, even in the certifications, there's so much focus on detail of getting just your little L position correct, and step 1, step 2, step 3. And just remembering that is really challenging. So we often have a little bit of time to go through the products properly, but not that much. So let me see what other questions I'm getting here. Will you ever have a teacher come to West Virginia? We're coming to West Virginia. It could take us a little while. What takes the longest is we get a lot of opportunities with hosts, and then when we go into the detail of, is everybody going to fit, and is this going to work and that going to work, that's where we get kind of hung up, is getting hosts. So we're really going after schools now, Melody, to get hosting spaces and like regular space that we can come back. Often I have multiple trainers now who are wonderful, but we're also being really, really careful and choosy about who's training so that they're really experienced. Grace says, neat, I had no idea. This actually makes a lot of sense. Maybe that's why I can't control my own ingrowns. So that might have been when we were just talking about ingrowns. Let's go down here. Please, again, check our sugaring. It's sugaringprofessional.com, class pages for classes. And if you have 6 estheticians that are interested in doing a class, or you think you can help us get deposits and fill a class, we need to have those deposits before we come to the city, because we have to book everything based on those. But I'm working really, really hard to do lower minimums if we can, get free education, live free education. Something I used to do were called meetups. They were $50, and you could come for 2 or 3 hours and practice whatever you wanted. Take a look at sugaring, before you make a huge commitment. So I'm working on setting up our trainers again to do the $50 meetups, which will be wonderful. Let's see. I've been sugaring since 2005, says Emily, and I highly suggest everyone try it. You'll get to retain more loyal clientele, definitely. That's an excellent point, Emily. You have to think, this is my analogy because I did some research in San Francisco. San Francisco 15 years ago had 800 waxers. That's still a lot in the San Francisco area, but there's, millions of residents. So 15 years later, there's 8,000 waxers in that area. There's still, from what I can see with advertising, there's still only about 20 to 30 sugaring places. So if you convert your clientele over to sugaring, then it's pretty amazing, because they choose sugaring typically. Not every single person, but almost all of them. I mean, it's mind-blowing. If you're doing it correctly, your clients will tell you that that's what they want, even if there's a slight difference in cost. So let's see. So informative. I would love to incorporate sugaring into my spa. Everyone should. I'm out trying to make sugaring easier, you know, which, like I said, even some of the other companies I've networked, talked to them, and they do things differently. So my intention with the way that I set everything up was to make this as easy as possible, but not leave anyone undereducated, you know, and unprepared. So let's go over our sugar scrubs, and then we'll go over how we prep. I'm doing this a little bit backwards, actually. So these are our sugar scrubs that we give clients at home, and they have a couple options after they scrub. And if someone has a lot of really infected ingrowns, this isn't going to be a great idea to be scrubbing the really, really irritated, large, almost where they turn to what looks like a large cyst kind of thing. You know where I see that a lot is people who smoke. They get these huge ingrowns in the bikini area, and they're the only ones sometimes that we can't, you know, get clear. The only other clients we have difficulty with getting clear with the aftercare and sugaring them properly, you have to put on the correct products after the service, and you have to tell them what to do for the first 48 hours or they're going to mess it up. They just don't know any better. So the Rose and Oxygen scrub smells like roses, and it's a sugar-based scrub. This is 100% organic sugar, and these are foamy scrubs, and there's a reason for that, because all of our estheticians, or excuse me, our clients have mostly seen the oil scrubs. Well, when you're sugaring, they can't wear any oil or lotion. If they do, it's going to block the sugar or the sugaring service. So you don't want, often people have a little bit of a blooper with the face with sugaring, it not picking up hair because there's too much product in the way. So they need to be instructed to scrub with products before the service that are compatible. The reason for scrubbing as well is it gets all of the dead skin cells out of the way, which can become hardened, which actually make it harder to remove the hair at that point. So let's see. The cookie dough smells like cookies, so people love this. They either kind of go rose, or the cookie dough is compatible with spray tanning. There's no oils in here. There's a tiny bit of oil in here, but not enough to block sugaring. And there's also ozonated oils in here, which is oxygen. So they need to be using these, let's see, 2 to 5 times a week, not necessarily every day, but they need to do it a couple of times before their service. So even the day of their service, as long as they're not, they can't really scrub themselves raw either with these. Salt, that can happen, it can burn them actually, and sugar dissolves quickly enough that they can't really overdo it if that's something that you're worried about. So everyone needs to be scrubbing, because the service can take 2 times the amount of time if you are not scrubbing before each service. It's shocked me. It's with waxing or sugaring. I can tell in 2 seconds when I start on a client. I bust them every time that for not scrubbing, because their hair comes out patchy. And if you watch for this, you'll see what I mean. Their hair will come out in patches. I'm going to adjust this a little bit. So, hello, Buddha. That's a little better. So, let's see. So, make sure they're scrubbing and then they're hydrating. So, they can use the 10% oxygen and sunflower elixir. I call this elixir because elixir means magic potion. And this is certainly like a magic potion. It can be used for so many things, and when you have ozone in a product, it discourages bacteria growth. There's actually a lot of clinical studies done on ozone, but it's not something that anyone took under their wing in our industry. Not only that, we've had to go through a lot of special formulation processes with an experienced ozonation lab. Not only were a lot of them not organic, but they were mostly in solid form, kind of like a coconut oil or a balm like this. A lot of ozonated products are solid like that, and we wanted liquids like a serum form so that they penetrated better and they were easier to use. So the 10% is the daily ozone. When you use 100% every day, it can be a little too much ozone. You can overload the skin. So think of the 100% as a special high-powered treatment. They can be used on ingrowns or acne. This is actually something amazing to put a few drops on as a moisturizer sometimes, and you're going to get an oxygen treatment. Susie, if you go to www.jessaskincare.com, that's our store, or there's a shop button on our sugaring website, and you can sign up for an account. If anyone needs to sign up, send us a copy of your license and malpractice insurance. And let me go over that for you guys for a second. I consulted a friend of mine who has helped with some of the biggest lines in our industry. She's a dear friend of mine now, and she's the one who actually kind of mentored me on, we have a lot of peels, a lot of hair removal products, and we want to make sure that our practitioners are practicing safely. So having malpractice is not the same as having slip and fall. So you could go to State Farm and get general liability for your spa, and then if you harm a client, let's say you're squirting the peel and it squirts into someone's eye, burns them, and you have that unlucky situation where that person is going to pursue it legally, you're not going to be protected unless you have malpractice insurance. You wouldn't believe how many don't have malpractice insurance. So we feel like for the safety of you and our company and also all of the other accounts that we have, that it's really important to maintain malpractice insurance, which is why we ask for it when we open accounts. But we have our own policy. I've actually been insured since 2012 because I thought about retail before going pro, and then I realized my whole life has been in the pro realm, and that's where I wanted to be, teaching people. So we almost went into all 11 Whole Foods regions. We were all set up to do, I actually had found the person that originally distributed Burt's Bees. I mean, it was a big deal. And we were set up to do all that 2 years before we launched professionally. And I switched directions because retail didn't really fit with my background. I couldn't train like this. And this has been more than I ever expected. You know, being on YouTube, I've had schools all over the country and estheticians thank me over and over for what I'm doing, which is amazing. I couldn't have imagined where everything would go. Now we have 2,000 spas and estheticians using our products just in 2 years. But the product line has 10 years of experience working on thousands of our clients with the products, so we have no doubt that they're super high quality, and customers always tell us they've never used anything better, you know, and that's without asking. They'll come in and go, my skin is transforming, you know, or with sugaring, that is transforming their experience, and it's been fantastic. I'm trying to share more. Let's see. I really want you to come to Colorado. We're working on all of our classes. We have the cities listed that we have the most interest. We actually keep a log of everyone who says that they really want to take the class. And then we set up the cities based on the head counts, so to speak, that we have for each city, so that we don't commit. Hi, Chantel. So we don't want to commit to a city and get a low, get too few students, and then, as I said before, not be able to run it. We want it to be solid once it's booked. So that's why we try to get enough people in each class before we commit. So these are our two main aftercare products. I didn't grab our ingrown balm. That's a more classic acid-based. It's a blend of acids balm that you can put on. But we have two choices as far as oxygen goes. This one is compatible with people with really bad acne. So anyone without a worry can use this unless they're allergic to sunflower oil. The oil we use is the linoleic type, which the oleic type of sunflower can actually break out people still because it's processed. So one other thing along processing, this product, to my shock from using sugar for years, we have never had a jar crystallize. I don't know if anyone who's used sugar can comment on this, but a lot of sugar brands, if you start to get air into the jar, and this is a known problem with organic and natural products, once air starts getting into a container, it can cause premature souring or expiration, I should say. And our sugars so far, we've got over 2 years of testing the shelf life, and I'm thinking that we're going to be over 2 years on the shelf life. Not only that, I've used jars down to this much left in a container, let it sit for over a year. We also have labs where we test, the bacteria content and that kind of thing after a certain amount of time. And let's see. So I was shocked because we do use a company who pasteurizes the 100% organic lemon juice just to prevent any bacteria from starting before we even get started cooking. Although sugar cooks at such high temperatures that it's going to pasteurize everything a second time. But we don't want any chance of contamination using fresh lemon juice, which we thought about in the beginning. But hi Luann, aloha. So let's see. The sugar paste is going to be extremely stable. So I was talking about the stability too of one of the other products, and it reminded me that it's important to know this because I've had calls about sugars from multiple companies, and I'm not singling anyone out. I've had calls from a lot of the main companies, and the sugars that get air in them from most companies start crystallizing. And as a formulator, this is my 2 cents on that. We use real raw ingredients, and I believe the other companies making organic sugar, maybe the sugar would be similar that they're starting with, but they're almost always not using real lemon juice, and they're using citric acid. So what does that do to your sugar, and why would that make it crystallize early? Well, it crystallizes early because citric acid already goes through a chemical process to pull out the citric acid. It's something that they put in soda, citric acid, and companies sometimes are saying we use sugar, water, and lemon juice, but it's not lemon juice. They're using a derivative of lemon juice, which isn't the same thing. So lemon juice seems to stabilize the formula, which shocked me. I thought it would be the opposite. I really did when we started, and it's all about testing everything out and seeing what happens. You've got to test, let it sit on the shelf, do more tests, and do a clinical study, essentially. And I'm all for that. I've done a ton of that. Like I said in the beginning, I was super skeptical about sugaring. The reason why is we had won award after award for waxing. We were the top waxing place in our area. And then when an esthetician mentioned sugaring to me, I thought, I don't know, you know, don't fix what's not broken, so to speak. And I thought, well, this is more natural, more organic, and I owe it to our spa to check this out. And before I knew it, everyone was switching over, and it was an amazing thing for our business. And as someone said earlier, it gives you a much more loyal clientele because there's not a lot of good sugaring places around. So if you were in San Francisco, you're competing with 8,000 waxers. If you were in San Francisco sugaring, you're competing with 20 or 30 places. And those places are converting a ton of people in the city to only sugaring. Once clients sugar, they won't go back to wax. They're going to look for a place that sugars. So I say we do more sugaring and get clients asking for sugaring in cities all across our country. We're also distributing all across the world now, which is amazing. Oh, thank you, Vanessa. Good to see you. Vanessa is someone who also has experienced waxing, and I think she prefers the original for waxing because when you get with really hot, sticky bodies, the soft can get a little melty quicker in the Brazilian and the underarms. Large areas, you're not going to have as much of a problem unless the person's sweating or the room's really hot. So be sure even when you're waxing to choose the right paste. And let's say you're sugaring. When you start with original, if your original was rock hard because your room was too cold, then you would add a little bit of soft before you start. If your sugar was really soft and unusually soft when you take it out of the jar and the room is hot, the person's sweaty, it's someone you know is hot bodied that gets sweaty, you want to start with, you know, part original and part firm. And usually the mixture is a quarter firm or half firm in that situation. I did 2 videos. I didn't end up releasing one because I really want to get a professional videographer going for my, you know, my videos that we're watching over and over again. But, you know, to get more information out there, the perfection in the videos is not as important as getting the education out there and getting as much out there as we can. So that's where that's coming from. So I'm also designing a master class where people can come and train for 5 days. We still have to figure out cost and that kind of thing because it'll be, you know, it'll be a lot of 8-hour days in a row, but we need more advanced education with sugaring. That's the bottom line. And it's really important that people are well educated before they go out there expecting success with sugaring. I always tell people you're not going to succeed unless you're willing to work on a lot of bodies. You need a lot of bodies to work on to succeed. So let's go over, let's see, some of these products. So I went backwards. I kind of went over the home care, the main thing people need to be doing, scrub, and then they should be applying their balm or their oil. Remember the week that they're getting their service done, they're not going to do that on appointment day, or you'll go to sugar and the sugar will just slide across the surface. Or it'll only partially work. It'll take up about 1/4 of the hair that you're going for. So if something seems really wrong when you're sugaring, something's probably really wrong. You know, so ask questions and educate your clients. And when you're prepping for sugaring, I should have brought gloves up here. You're going to spritz your toner, and you want to spritz it on the skin. Now, some of my early videos, before we designed a curriculum where I perfected exactly what people should be doing in an ideal circumstance in their room. Some of my early videos have variations of what we're teaching now, and really it's best ideally to stick with what we're doing now, because we also had created some of the products a couple years ago, so we were in that process of fine-tuning everything. And so we found, for example, even though clients go, ooh, that's cold, spraying it on the skin, this is what it does. Let's see if you can see it glistening. Oh, there's a drop of toner. So you want the skin pretty soaked. And now I need to grab a little wipe. I apologize. Hang on a second. Okay. So you're going to spray it on the skin because that helps dissolve sweat, oils, bacteria, and then you're going to wipe it off. Now, what happens, this question I get a lot, if you spray it on your wipe and then wipe their skin, you know what happens? A very tiny amount's on the middle of the wipe, and you're moving around bacteria, dirt, sweat, oil. You're not dissolving it like spraying it on the skin. So you want to spray it, take a dry 4x4, wipe it down, and then I love our little shooter bottles for the powder. And then you just shoot a little line, you know, or a few little piles like this of powder, and then keep another dry 4x4, a separate one, because the other one's going to be wet. This is not really a real 4x4, but you can get the idea. And then massage the powder in. Now this wipe has powder on it, so the powder that's on your wipe is going to help you repowder the area in the middle of services sometimes. So you don't necessarily need to squirt a whole bunch of powder sometimes on their skin in the middle of a service. If their skin gets unpowdered, the residue on your wipe, take your wipe and just repowder that area again. Only add a little bit more powder if you need to. You don't need to have the skin caked with powder. And that's another thing in my early videos where some of that wasn't quite perfected yet, because we were getting used to our own product creations, believe it or not, even though we had sugared a long time. Our products are slightly different in some ways and a lot different in other ways. So after you powder, you would, you know, make sure I usually put at least one glove on, but not your sugaring glove. I'm left-handed, so it would be this hand. And put a glove on even when you're prepping, just as a habit, because when you're in a Brazilian area especially, you should definitely have gloves on. But even legs and arms and that kind of thing, it's a good business practice to keep one glove on even while you're prepping, even while you're cleaning at the end, and we'll go over that in a minute, because there's a lot of mistakes that I see in the beginning with people. Excuse me, I'm getting a little tickle in my cup of water is not right in front of me here. Just a moment. Good things to remember doing my dry run here today for Monday. Keep my water close by because I'll be doing a lot of talking. So after your prep, you're going to sugar the area. Now here's where a lot goes wrong, you know, in people's studio after the service. There's a lot that goes wrong, and this goes for waxing too. You need to prep the skin properly. With our waxing products, you do exactly the same thing that you do with sugaring for prepping. Also, you can powder with, you should be prepping and using it, if you're using it as wax as well, you should be prepping just like you're sugaring, or your sugar wax is not going to work properly. We're going to do more videos on that soon. So after your service, you want to make sure that you're treating the skin properly. It's in a down barrier state. So just like after a peel or micro, you don't want to use really overactive products or actives on the skin. So make sure that after the service that you are, first thing you're going to do is spray the skin down again. We're going to have little distilled water pump bottles that are empty, that are really affordable, that'll have a nice label on them soon so you can sanitize them. And keep a pump bottle of distilled water, which I'm at my home office, so I don't have all my aesthetic room tools here, but just for the sake of showing you, I'm going to use the water that I have, but you would be pumping this out of a easy to sterilize container. And then my other wipes are downstairs, but you've got to soak this wipe, even more water than this, but this is a real thin paper wipe that I had up here that's not the same as a 4x4. So you need 4x4s. We're adding 4x4s to our store this weekend. We just did an amazing photo shoot, which I'm really excited about because I've wanted some things to look a little more professional for a long time in our store, but everything's a process. So after this is soaked, make sure it's soaked where you're even squeezing a little water out. Spray the toner on the area you just finished. Wipe the area down and dissolve all of your sugar. That's why this needs to be really wet. So what the toner does is it zaps any, it discourages the bacteria from starting. It's kind of has antiseptic type properties, and it kind of closes down those follicles that are open and unhappy. And then you're going to apply. My favorite thing is the elixir, and we should have a pump alternative that you can buy, again, really affordably if you want to put a pump. So you can just pump out some of the liquid. You only need a few drops, even for a whole arm. And then you apply this step after waxing or sugaring. Now remember that a lot of lines don't teach about this. They don't encourage it, or if they do, the product is maybe dyed with synthetic coloring, and it's got synthetic fragrance. And what that's going to do, if you can imagine having a small cut and putting in a small cut, you wouldn't want to put dye or fragrance in a cut to try to heal it, correct? So, when you've got open follicles that are in a somewhat of a little wounded state for 48 hours, you want to treat them almost like you would a little tiny wound. And you're not going to put actives in that area, which oxygen is okay because it's anti-inflammatory. It flushes out histamine, discourages bacteria. It has a long clinical study history of wound healing and that kind of thing, believe it or not. Even with dead tissue, I'm grabbing my ear because there was a story or a situation where someone lost part of their ear to a dog bite. The tissue started to actually die, turn black, and with oxygenated product, they were able to bring the tissue back to life. So that's how amazing oxygen is. I had to have oxygen in my line, but it was really hard finding an organic and natural delivery system. They're almost all hydrogen peroxide, which to some extent hydrogen peroxide has a lot of studies that show, some show it's okay, some show that it's not okay, that it's toxic. There is a toxicity to it. So whenever I have enough conflicting studies like that, I try to stay away from ingredients and things that might be shown, to be toxic later. So that's why we went towards ozone, which is a very unique product. The final label is almost done, and once it is, we're probably going to switch our kits for classes and add this product so that when people work on the face, they don't have to think about extra things in the beginning with everything going on that they're already learning. They don't have to think about, you know, oh my gosh, somebody has acne, I can't use the coconut balm. But the coconut balm actually will sometimes go a tiny bit further because it melts into the skin, and then you get a lot of spreadability out of it. And if someone's dry, it's a good product on the body, unless it's maybe back acne or chest acne. On the body, it's safe. Even with people with ingrowns, it functions differently than the face, but oh my gosh, don't use this on faces with acne or anyone with a lip that breaks out. You've got to use the sunflower version. It's not possible for this to clog the worst acne. If you guys have seen some of my work with some really, you know, basically the worst stages of acne, we've done before and after photos, and some of them we're using this sometimes as a moisturizer and a brightener, you know, and a healer. So it's wonderful, wonderful multi-purpose, and it's affordable for clients. So afterwards, the first 48 hours, one other thing you can use, which I love, is our, excuse me, I'm getting a little glare, Hungarian mud. And this is the real raw mud that comes out of Hungary. There's one place in Hungary where they basically scoop it out. They have a spa there that they've treated with people with arthritis and, you know, sprains and breaks. They pack the mud on large areas of people's body, and it helps heal the body. So there's a better description of that on our website, but it's incredible for acne. I turned on one of my dear friends who makes her own line to this product. She's actually given me a lot of advice because we're friends, that, you know, not in an official manner, but she could have because she's so experienced. So I've shared a little bit of my secrets with her, and to my surprise, this is one of her top selling products now. And we get it, like I said, directly from the source. So when you see that it's green or it's powdered, that's not what it looks like when it comes out, when they're scooping it out of where it comes from. So they actually seal this and send it in, you know, it's like a hermetically sealed bag, and they ship it all the way from Hungary. So in service, you can put this on for 10 minutes directly after the service. If you have someone who's really, really inflamed with histamine, this feels like you're putting an ice pack, you know, on the area, but not quite as cold as an ice pack. An ice pack might be really chilly. Excuse me, I'm going to take a little sip of this. So, this can be a great add-on treatment that you should definitely charge for. We have like a small, I think medium and large area charge. You don't want to charge too much, or the clients just may not do it, if you know what I mean. And then they can also take this home and use it a couple of times the week that they get their service. So it's a fantastic product for that. It's an organic mud. There's nothing added, like I said, right from the earth. And you just want to make sure that the skin is cleaned with the toner and everything if you're going to do it as an after treatment in your service. So people are always asking about, you know, vajacials is what a lot of people are calling them. Be really careful performing vajacials. There's actually some gray areas in our scope of practice where we're not supposed to be steaming and doing peels and, you can do add-on treatments in that area. And I apologize if this comes as a surprise to anyone who's been doing them with steam and like a facial, but we are not licensed to do a facial on the Brazilian area. Not only that, depending on how you were trained to do it, you should not do any kind of treatment like that on the labia, which is what they consider the genitals. And there's actually still a clause in the FDA laws that says we're not even supposed to be doing hair removal on the genitals, but we know that that is not being enforced. But it's interesting that that rule is there, and that can come into play with some insurance companies too. So you should look at your underwriting and make sure that they're not going off of that FDA, statement in your malpractice insurance, because I found that to be a problem with a couple companies. ASCP, a lot of us individuals use, but ASCP does not cover slip and fall and general liability very well. If somebody slips, falls, and breaks their arm in your parking lot, guess who's paying for it? You. So read the underwriting, as daunting as it seems, in your insurance. I have 3 separate policies because I travel and train. I have one that covers that, and it helps cover Brazilians additionally. I have a spa policy that covers general liability and malpractice really well. And then I have manufacturing product liability policies. And there were some rumors floating around a long time ago that you're not allowed to make products in your home. We, for the most part, haven't done that for years. We use our production facilities or special places that we have set up in the past. That would be, we have a huge warehouse and lab now that we use. But I have always kept I'm always creating, as everyone can tell. So, and Heather, I see you. I'm going to answer your question in just a second. But I have always been really creative at all hours of the day, sometimes wherever I am. So if I want to take some raw materials, if I'm at home, at my spa, or at our lab and warehouse, I'm able to create products and be insured. All of our locations are insured for me to be in the creation process, or even if we were filling something, which we wouldn't do. We've got our huge warehouse, but I'm just saying, if you've explored having your own products, and I've seen in the groups especially a lot of really strange talk about this, but you are allowed, depending on the policy and the company you choose, to create wherever you've insured your location. And then you need to look at the FDA guidelines and make sure that you're following those, you're in a sanitary, place. But if you're creating something and not sending samples or selling something, you're creating it in your kitchen for fun, to get going, and you're using it on yourself, that's totally okay with product creation, as long as you have a policy that covers that. So some of you might have seen me doing that when I was creating the sugar, because I was creating all different pastes. I wanted to be in control of creating our paste so that we would never have a problem with a lab that would either reproduce our formula, give our formula to someone else, create a delay where we couldn't get sugar quickly. So we chose to be really involved in certain products that we make. And Heather says, what do you charge to add it on? Can it be used with Brazilians? So she's talking about the Hungarian mud. Yes, this can be used with Brazilians. We have different charges, like a small, medium, and large. And I think it's 8, 11, and 15. I've got to look because we switched our menu around recently, but it's on my spa website. You're welcome to base some of your prices, research, and that kind of thing on my spa's setup, which is jessaskin.com. So our store is Jessa Skincare, and my spa website is jessaskin.com. And we've kind of gotten through all of our products, which is exciting. I didn't have the ingrown balm, but remember that if you didn't catch the whole video, by the way, go back to the beginning and you can see all the comments coming through and watch the whole thing. It'll stay in the group recorded. I'm doing a few dry runs so that I'm ready for Monday, but I'm going to be scheduling these so that everyone's not surprised and that I'm live and then they miss getting a comment and ask questions, because I had a few people concerned because I was practicing. One thing I recently figured out about going live is there's no easy way to do it from a computer. So thank God I practiced, because you know, I discovered the limitations of going live, but this has really been the most fantastic way I've seen to do webinars. I think versus writing posts as often as I was, that I'll be sharing a lot of teaching and information live, because it's easier to fit in a lot more and answer questions and have it be really interactive and fun. So thank you, everyone, and I will be back on Monday, and we'll be going over a lot of other products. Jenny, I see you just joined. Make sure you go back to the beginning. We're just wrapping up now. And have fun sugaring. Remember, we also have wonderful products for waxing, especially if you're all strip wax. You can't do any better than using 100% organic sugar. I actually, before I go, had one client, he said he'd had over 200 back waxes, and he still wanted to wax versus sugar at that time. This was a long time ago, but we switched our strip wax, of course, all over to SugarLove as our wax when we do get a wax request, which is rare at this point. And he said the pain level went from a 7 out of 10 over 200 times, no matter where he went, no matter what the person used, no matter how experienced they were, it didn't matter. And when we waxed him with sugar, the difference was so enormous that he was out in our waiting area going, I can't believe it. The pain was only a 3 out of 10. You know, he was in complete disbelief. And that was just using sugar as a strip wax. It's even less painful as a sugar paste. So if you can cut, you know, for him, if his pain level was a 7 and we cut it down to a 3, is what he described, that's over a 50% reduction in pain just using sugar as a wax. Why is that happening? Because sugar tends to not stick to live skin cells. Wax, you know, there's sap, essentially. The pine resin is sap in wax, and that sticks like the dickens to everything. So it sticks to the live skin cells. Sugar initially repels the water, that's the water content that's in the live skin cells. So I plan on doing videos for our waxing estheticians as well. My background was 8 years in waxing before I ever sugared. So I have a ton of experience waxing and doing it really well. But sugaring, you know, impressed me so much, and it helped my business so much that's where we chose to focus our education because I think it's really needed in our world. All right, all of my lovely ladies, this is really fun. I'll be doing this a lot, so have your friends join the group if they need this kind of education. And we'll be talking about all kinds of things. I still want to do webinars on a lot of different things. So we're going to start getting through a lot of what we need for sugaring. And then we're going to shift into doing, I may even do some collaborative webinars with other estheticians who do things that I'm not as much of a specialist in. So it should be really fun and easy way to get involved in free webinars in the group. And I'm keeping them private because some of this information is just for us with licenses only, if you know what I mean. So lots of love to everyone, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.